Welcome back, everybody, to the Derby City Fandom podcast. My name is Kenny, joined today by Colin. Now, we got some special news that I'm going to drop on Colin. This episode, along with our last couple, will officially be able to be listened to on your various podcast listening services.
Streaming services.
Yes.
Hey, what are we on, Kenny?
Basically all of them. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. You name it, it will be on there here shortly.
Yes.
Yes, we are expanding.
We are. That's awesome. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm glad to hear it.
Just so we're clear, everybody, this is the first time I'm hearing this. This just dropped on me now. So, yes.
Yes.
So that will be coming live to you on social media here shortly.
Yes. Now, this episode is obviously going to be the announcement of it. I'm going to do some backlogging and put some of the past episodes up on there as well. The ones that had the better audio with the new setup. So, Colin.
You know what today's episode's about?
Yes, I believe Gondor is calling for aid, and we are here to answer.
Yes, we are doing Lord of the Rings, everyone. Oh, I'm super excited about this episode. Oh my gosh. And by the way, happy belated Gondorian Day.
Yes.
March 25th, Frodo destroyed the One Ring in Mount Doom.
Yes, all of like 2 decades ago. Jesus. Has it already been that long?
Hey, man. The anniversary's coming up here in April, and they're putting the movies in theaters. The theatrical version, just so we're clear. I don't think they're doing extended. But
I remember.
God bless, if the extended editions were in theater, I would be there in a heartbeat. I'm still going to be there in a heartbeat, but even more excited. You know what I mean?
Yes. Now, I remember here probably about 10 years ago, there was a local movie theater that was doing all of them back to back, extended cut. So it's like this 13-hour experience if you could, muster your way through it.
Oh, yeah. No, so actually during COVID, was this last year? I want to say this was last year. I forget the dates or the months even, but at the Science Center downtown, everybody, just so we're clear, the Louisville Science Center downtown, they were showing the movies on their big screen. What's it called?
Do they have an IMAX?
It's the IMAX. Exactly.
They do have IMAX. Okay.
Yeah. They were showing the movies on that, and I actually bought tickets, but for some reason, work got
the claws and you drug you back.
So you had to buy the tickets in advance, though. I guess in theory you could get day of, but they were more expensive because they were doing it like that for some reason. So I bought them in advance, all 3 of them, and didn't see a single one. So that was a waste of I forget how much it was, at least $30.
Well worth it for that sort of experience, I imagine. So, oh, good Lord. Is there any, fantasy kind of movie setting outside of, Harry Potter and Star Wars that even really competes with Lord of the Rings at all? Game of Thrones tried. I don't think it did quite as well.
Game of Thrones, or, if you want to throw in Marvel, DC. I guess those are really
technically fantasy, but Tolkien fantasy, like elves and dwarves and stuff.
I don't know. If you all think of anything, throw it up in the comments. But yeah, they have their own freaking little town in New Zealand, Hobbiton.
Yeah,
which is definitely on my bucket list to go see here in the near future. Most likely the later future, but.
Yeah,
whatever.
I have to think that, somebody somewhere has a bed and breakfast that's just called, Second Breakfast.
I feel like...
Or 11 Z's.
That's a business idea for sure. If y'all want to take that and run with it, please do. But Kenny, do you want to quit our jobs and open up a bed and breakfast?
No, sir.
It's not weird, man. If you don't, it's not weird.
It's not
It's only
weird.
weird if you make it weird. But I'm dead serious. I'm down to quit my job and open up a bed and breakfast. Lord of the Rings.
I'm sure that's already been taken. There's no way I'm the first one to think of that.
But locally, come on.
Make it a chain. All right. Well, so where do we want to begin? Lord of the Rings. So we've been eating good with Lord of the Rings here as a fandom. So Rings of Power obviously was a commercial success.
I would say so. I would agree.
Yes. Already slated to have another follow-up season or two at least.
Oh yeah, no, the Rings of Power, they're gonna probably reach for like 4 or 5 seasons.
I think they kind of have to, just
Oh, yeah.
because of
There's
how
so much.
dense
Exactly.
the Silmarillion was. But
Which, by the way, I'm currently reading.
okay,
And it's a hard read. I'll admit. I'm about halfway through, and I've been reading it pretty much since December. I want
Right.
to say, and I'm only halfway through, so I pick it up once a week, just read a few pages, maybe a chapter or so, but I'll be honest, lately,
yeah, that was always like the hardest barrier of entry, like outside of the movies, is that those books are thick
the books are
with
thick,
extra C's.
but out of those, I would say the Silmarillion is the hardest. The Lord of the Rings are a fun read, but the Hobbit, I mean, it's an easy read, but the Silmarillion, I feel like it's the hardest one to get through, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the Hobbit's the easiest one because that's the one that's kind of dedicated to its own book, while the others were split up for the most part. Other than the
there's
Silmarillion.
3 books and 3 movies, and for some reason, there's one book that got made into 3 movies.
Right, which was
I have mixed feelings on that, but
mixed feelings, but I think they did at least a good job making that work the best they could.
all right, let's dive into the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
I'm gonna do my normal spiel like I do in the beginning. All right.
Sure, go for it.
So, Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, I'm going to give you them scores real quick. So, Rotten Tomatoes has The Fellowship at 91% and an 8.8 out of 10 on IMDb, whereas The Two Towers has 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and also, again, an 8.8. And lastly, The Return of the King with a shocking 93% and a 9 out of 10 on IMDb. So the scores there,
I do think that Two Towers was the strongest, in my personal opinion, just because of the battle choreography was just so, like, hype. Just with the Battle of Helm's Deep and how all that plays out.
but there's only one battle in the Two Towers, and there's multiple in Return of the King.
2, actually. You have the
Battle of
the
Pelennor
Ents.
Fields.
Yeah, against Isengard, and then
No, you're thinking of the Two Towers. Unless we're talking about
we are talking about the Two Towers here.
We are talking about
Yes.
the Two Towers. Okay, yes, in the Two Towers there is the Battle of the Ents at Isengard and then Helm's Deep.
Helm's Deep. That's what I'm getting at. I think those particular battles were fantastically done, just with the line delivery and like the emotional impact of them.
Sure.
While Return of the King is probably like the close second. You don't get a whole lot of like battle scenes per se in Fellowship. That's the beginning of the journey. They're trying to establish the plot. You have a couple of fights, but you have no like large scale.
Yeah. No, that's fair to say. But let's move on to the basic. Let's start with the score first. I think that's a good starting point.
Okay.
So, for those of you who don't know, Howard Shore did the score for the films.
Yes, he did.
And I want to say, my God.
Wow.
Yes. Abso-freaking-lutely.
Chef's kiss.
Kenny, I'll ask you this question and I'll tell you mine. But what particular score in the films did you like that went with particular scene? What really stuck out the most for you?
So I am probably going to expose myself here because I don't remember if this particular theme was in first in the Fellowship or in the later ones, but when you get like the Shire theme, the Hobbit theme, like
Yeah.
whenever like Frodo and Sam are on screen,
Yeah.
is the one that sticks out other than like, the epic battles score that you get with the trumpets.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's very it gives that feeling of home.
Yeah, the feeling of home and hope, and as Gandalf says, the small acts of kindness that people do that keep evil at bay.
Exactly. Now, for me, that is actually a good one, but the ones that stick out to me are, obviously, we're going to start with Helm's Deep, Battle of Helm's Deep, when Gandalf is coming down the mountain there, or the hill, I guess
Yes.
we should say. So that little...
Look to the hills, or look to the east on the 5th day at dawn.
Yeah, exactly. So that little spiel is awesome, but obviously got to go with the lighting of the beacons. For me, I don't know. Every single time I watch that scene, I get freaking chills, and every now and again, that's a lie. Almost every single time.
I mean, it makes you want to just slam the door open and be like, Gondor calls for aid.
Yeah, no, almost every single time I'll get on Snapchat or make a video of it and send it to a group of friends or whatever and say, lighting of the beacons, Gondor
Yes.
calls for aid, basically.
Yes, now all of China knows you're here.
But also, the Battle of Pelennor Fields. That's kind of a cliche, I guess, but it does justice.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about casting. For me, I guess casting was overall pretty well put together. There's a few actors, I guess, that kind of annoy me. One particular individual, sorry, but I'm going to call this person out, is Liv Tyler, who whispers the entire freaking film, which... Now that you think about it, she whispers in every film that she is in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, my brain was trying to make the excuse of the reason why she's whispering a lot is because she's doing, like, elvish incantations, basically.
No, she whispers in every damn film. Every damn film, she whispers. Like, okay, I'm going to have to turn the volume up anytime Liv Tyler is on screen.
Subtitles, my dude.
Well, I do have subtitles, but you know what? I want to feel like I'm there, too, and I want to be able to hear it, regardless.
Fair.
But, obviously the main cast are phenomenal. Viggo Mortensen, Hugo Weaving, and a bunch of other guys. But, the side cast, the side characters, like Carl Urban. I mean... He's a freaking phenomenal actor. He has roles in, the Marvel Universe. He has role in this universe and a bunch of other stuff going on. I just think he's a phenomenal actor, and he just kills it. And then obviously Andy Serkis being also a multi-universe dude. I mean, like, you'd have to be insane not to love that actor. Like, he plays... a multitude of characters, and he just kills every role that he's in.
Yes. Now, I think I would be doing everybody a disservice to say that Mortensen did not do his fair part in acting. Like, he broke his damn toes kicking his own helmet and had to play out that scene in pain while crying that he just broke his foot.
Well, so that happens, yeah, but there's also another thing that I don't think very many people know about. So when Sam and the Fellowship is running towards Frodo, who's out on the boat trying to get to the other shore, There's actually when he's running in the little gravel into the river, there's actually a piece of glass in the gravel, and he cuts his foot open. And if you look at the behind the scenes kind of stuff, you actually see the glass inside his foot, and he ends up being medevaced out of there and taken to the hospital to get stitches and whatnot.
Yeah. There's a lot of stories like that. Like Orlando Bloom broke a couple ribs doing the Two Towers scenes, like shield surfing and all of that.
Yeah.
You got the broken toes from Mortison. You have Mortison having to deflect a dagger that was supposed to be thrown like far to the left, but because of how the prosthetics and the different makeup on the thrower affected the aim, it ended up being more straight on. So he has to deflect a dagger that's actually being thrown at him.
And he deflects it with a sword.
Yes. Turns out that he's actually trained as a swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably saved him there.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the same guy who plays those Uruk-hai and Orc characters is the same guy in every single film, even the Hobbit ones.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true. But also, since we're on the cast topic, Ian Holm and Christopher Lee definitely brought their A game.
Yes.
Christopher Lee being the only actor in the entire cast and crew and everybody pretty much is the only one to meet Tolkien. And
yeah, Christopher Lee just killed it.
Yeah, he got it. He got his blessing from Tolkien himself, saying, "Hey, if this were ever to become a film, I want you to play Gandalf."
And he's just like, you know what? I want to be Saruman instead.
Well, no, actually, he kind of threw sent Peter Jackson a picture of him dressed as a wizard for a specific role. I'm drawing a blank on what the role was. But he kind of did it as a joke, but also in seriousness, like, look, I can play a wizard, dude. But Jackson made the decision that you're kind of too old, so they went with Ian McKellen. But they ended up casting him as Saruman, so
yes.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ian Holm, obviously, playing Bilbo Baggins. Loved it.
Yeah, classic. Also, one of the few 5-frame windows of childhood trauma that I can remember was him going creepy face screaming trying to get the ring from Frodo.
Yeah, when they're at Rivendell, do that. That creeped me out when I was younger when I first saw that movie.
Man,
that was intense for me. R.I.P. by the way to those two guys.
Yes,
who are no longer with us, and they will always be remembered through their film.
Yes. I did not think that Lee had been as old as he was. I did not realize he was born in 92 or 92, 1922 is what I mean.
Yeah, and
he was an old man.
Oh yeah. And he's in the military. He's actually seen some shit.
Yes. I think the quote was, he was asked if he could, imagine what it was like to be stabbed. And he just responds like, I don't need to imagine. I have been stabbed before.
Has he been stabbed before, or he's actually seen people get stabbed?
One or the other, but it was like a result of him being involved in World War II or whatever.
Yeah, so that conversation with him and Peter Jackson, that's basically how that went. It's like, I want you to, when you get stabbed in the back, kind of make a exaggerated noise.
And it's just that's not what people do.
That's not what it sounds like, man. And what you see in the film is how it really sounds like. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Oh man.
So let's go into the overall differences.
Sure.
Between book and film. I took the liberty of making a few notes of differences between the movie and the film. And so the first one that I'm going to bring up is, Shoto. What is his name? Frodo shows more courage in the books, whereas the movie, he seems more like a, as I put it, like a little bitch, and Sam pretty much carries him throughout the whole journey.
I mean, he does literally at the end.
Yes, that is true. He does carry him up a mountain, which only kind of proves my point. Sam, or not Sam, Frodo, basically, he just whines the entire time, and he uses obviously he got stabbed. He's gotten stabbed multiple times.
Yeah.
But only
stabbed,
one legit stab.
Like, stabbed, poisoned, wrapped up in a giant spider web.
Yeah, I mean...
dragged off. Almost drowns in, like, a swamp of the dead sort of scenario.
You're talking about the dead marshes. Huh?
Yes, dead marshes, thank you. I'm like,
yeah.
It's not just called the dead swamp.
No, it's called the dead marshes.
But, oh man, there's a lot that I think is left to be desired with Frodo in particular, but the story that I think he's trying to portray through his character growth is that he takes the burden upon himself, but he has to slowly realize that he has to rely on other people to help him carry that burden too.
Yeah.
Which kind of comically, you have to have Sam like physically carry him up the mountain.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that I don't really like about the movie is, that aspect of it. I kind of wish Frodo acted more like he had more courage. He was a little braver. Or
sure.
Not a little pushover.
Now, I don't remember the books terribly well in regards to Frodo, but Frodo doesn't really... Like, he has, like, thematically the most important role in the movies, but he has the less screen time.
I don't know. I never really got into it, never really thought about it or even fact-checked that, but interesting comment. If you know the actual truth behind that, please leave a comment. But interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely get more of like Aragorn and the other Fellowship members than Frodo and Sam. Because it's supposed to be like this big action film of them trying to like distract the all-seeing eye of evil from noticing the two little thieves trying to drop the ring into the fiery pit of doom.
Interesting. Never really thought about it. Okay. All right, let's move on to this other difference that I found. So, in the movie, you find that Saruman is, after pretty much that little battle with the Ents in Isengard, he's at the top of Isengard, and basically with Wormtongue, and the crew rolls up and tries to figure out what the next plan is for the bad guys and try and get some information from Saruman. Long story short, he doesn't actually die at that location.
He does in the extended version.
In the extended version, right, exactly. In the extended version, he, gets stabbed in the back like we were talking about by
and then
Wormtongue.
Falls all the way down and gets basically impaled through the back on one of the spires.
Yeah. No, that's actually not what happens in the book.
Yes.
So actually what does happen, he ends up going to the Shire. He heads west and goes to the Shire with Wormtongue and basically collaborates with, I can't remember what their names are, the Backfill Baggins, whatever they're called. What are their names? Oh
yeah, they're Baggins.
Sackville Baggins. God
Yeah.
bless. And tries to take over the Shire. And so he collaborates with those two and ends up killing him, whatever. And then when Frodo and pretty much the whole group does their whole spiel and goes back to the Shire, they basically start an uprising and get them to get the Shire back. And they end up going to, their headquarters, if you will, of Saruman and Wormtongue, and they basically confront them. And long story short, Saruman basically kind of talks some shit about Wormtongue, and he basically slits his throat because he didn't like the comment that he had to made about him. And so, yeah, he slits his throat. Saruman dies then. Wormtongue gets away, or tries to get away, I should say, and then ends up being shot by a couple arrows by some hobbit archers. So that's one thing that happens in the book that they don't show in the movie.
Sure.
Which I think is...
It's interesting, but I don't think it really plays
into the movie.
And
I kind of agree that was the best route to go. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Another thing is the time between Bilbo's birthday, his 111th birthday.
Yes.
Yeah, between his birthday and Frodo leaving the Shire is actually much shorter in the film. But I'm pretty sure it's several years that actually happened between that and him leaving.
Okay.
I want to say it's at least 10 years.
That's kind of massive then.
I almost want to say it's closer to 20, maybe 17.
Yeah. Because
I think 17 is a common number in the book.
Because doesn't like the entirety of the movies basically take place within like a singular month?
Yeah, no, in the movies they make it seem very, very short, but actually in the book it happens over a long period of time. I forget how exactly long the journey is between the Shire and Mount Doom. Yeah. But it's definitely a good amount of time.
Right, because from what I remember, you only get like the first like fellowship scene that stands out is like, they go to the end, they find Aragorn there.
They find him in the Bree.
Yeah, they find him in the Bree, but then they go
with a prancing pony to be
go out to the rock outcropping, and they have the Ringwraith scene. Like that was like your first
Weathertop.
Yes, Weathertop. You get that particular scene, and that's like your first like day to night like transition in the film that you see outside of like the Hobbit Festival. So that right there is only like 2 days at most.
Yeah, that's the first real transition. If we're just counting the journey from when he leaves to that point, yeah, I guess that is.
So everything happens real quick. Now, where time starts to get like a little bit muddy.
What? No, you know what? No, I'm going to correct you on this.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in the extended edition, actually, they have Sam and Frodo have a night together, and they actually find the elves. They find some elves going to the Undying Land, so they're en route to go there. And they see them, and they have a little campfire together, and Sam's having some trouble sleeping on the ground, and he's like, just pretend Frodo says to him, just pretend like you're in your bed and just fall asleep or something like that.
Well, they use that line in the movie as well, just pretend you're back in the Shire.
Yeah. So that is actually the first thing that recalls to me before they meet up with Merry and Pippin. And then they go off and...
Who were totally just out trying to find some weed to smoke.
Or,
just got caught up in like this ridiculous saga.
Yeah, maybe they should have stayed home that day and...
Yeah. Oh, man. I think that they are my favorite set of hobbits. Like, they add the most to the film.
They are entertaining bunch. They obviously try to steal Gandalf's fireworks and make things a little more exciting around the Shire, which I definitely feel like I would be that hobbit. But at the same time, if I'm going to be honest with myself, if there's a hobbit that I can relate to the most, and actually maybe Jake, this might be more Jake than myself, but the grumpy old hobbit that, sees the kids see the fireworks and he's cheering up, and then his wife looks over at him and he gets all grumpy again. You remember that scene?
Yeah.
I think that'd be more me. I'm like the old guy that sits on the front porch and
like, get off my stoop.
Get off my lawn, little kid. Like, I think I'm going to grow up to be that old man.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I was younger, I had a rebel phase, for sure.
Yes.
But another thing that kind of pops out to me that I feel like that should have been mentioned first, and I'm surprised that I didn't mention this first, was the fact that Tom Bombadil is not in the movie.
He's not.
And I think that everybody listening is going to agree with me when I say this, but I feel like that he should have been. Because I feel like he doesn't play a major role in the movie, but he definitely has an effect.
Sure.
In the book. And so, after doing some research myself and seeing the reason why Jackson didn't actually include Bombadil in the movie, turns out I kind of, agree with him in a way. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I do recall him saying that was probably the hardest decision to make about the film, is to not include him.
Right. In my research, I saw that one particular scene where they get the Army of the Dead involved, Jackson originally did not want to include because he felt like it was too unbelievable. But he just caved to the idea that it's what the fans would like, so he included it, hoping that they would like it.
I liked it.
I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the end when they do agree to fight with Aragorn and everybody else, and renew your vows and whatnot.
Yes. What say you?
At the same time, of course, everybody is going to be thinking once the Battle of Pelennor Fields was over, everybody's like, okay, why don't you just use the dead guys and go over to Mordor and fuck everybody up?
That was not part of the deal.
But that was not part of the deal. Obviously, if you're gonna make that kind of a commitment to somebody and say, I'm gonna honor your vows and let you actually die off and rest in peace, that kind of spiel, obviously they're not gonna trust you.
Yeah.
If Aragorn did that. So
if you think about it, though, also there wasn't really much battle at the Black Gate. They got encircled, and then they do the final charge after the inspirational for Frodo line.
Yeah.
And then the tower comes down and all of the stuff happens.
No, there's some fighting going on,
not much.
Sure, not much. There's definitely some fighting going on, and then the Eagles come in. They fight the Nazgul up in the air. And actually, a cool scene that pops out to me just now is when the Eagles do come in, and they're kind of panning out, having a shot from the sky. You actually see one of the Nazgul fall off. One of the flying, I forget what they're even called. One of the flying,
wyverns, I guess. I don't know.
I don't remember what they're called, but they actually fall down onto the battlefield. So you see that in the background. It's very short, but it is seen. I think that's pretty cool. I just have so many notes that I want to talk about. So yeah, so this is gonna be one of our longest podcasts ever. I'm super, super stoked. So the next thing I want to talk about is we're jumping all over the place, so everybody bear with us. So the species of Shagrat and Garbog are actually reversed. So the two orcs that come down after Sheila ends up stinging Frodo and whatnot, and he's wrapped up in web, and Sam gets the ring, and they take him to Minas Morgul, I guess, or
I believe that's correct. Yeah,
is it Minas Morgul or Barad-dûr?
One of the two.
It's one of the two. So anyway, after they do that, so actually, these are orcs that are discovered. What did I say? The species of Shagrat and Garbag are reversed. These are the orcs that discovered Frodo after he was paralyzed by Shelob. Garbag was an orc, and Shagrat was actually an Uruk in the books. In the films, it was the other way around. However, the roles remain the same, is what I wrote down.
I can see that. Ultimately, not really important to the overall.
It's not, but it's just one of those small little things that
small details, right?
Yeah, just subtle differences from movie to book, and I think that needs to be brought up.
Like one subtle thing that you really don't see until, I guess, with the franchise inclusion of the Ring of Power is that you do see Gandalf with the red ring on in a couple of shots. The red ring of fire.
Yes, you do see that, and I feel like that's not really explained in the movies, but it kind of goes into
the details and the small nods of, okay, the ring of fire is like its power is to like instill hope and basically, like hopelessness.
Right. And I'm pretty sure we have that discussion in our Rings of Power podcast.
So you can give that a listen to. That is in the old era of this podcast.
When our equipment weren't up to date.
Yes. So now, that might be a bit tough to listen to. But so fair warning there.
So another thing, so Boromir dies at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Poor Sean Bean. Can't ever catch a break.
He always dies in the first season or first movie, whatever it is. Yes. However, he does not always die in whatever film or show or whatever. And I can prove that to you right now. He does not die in National Treasure. He actually just gets arrested. Now, you could have that argument, well, he's probably going to end up dying in jail.
Doesn't he take the blame for kidnapping the president?
No, that's the second one. There's a second National Treasure. That's entirely
that the plot of the second
Nicolas Cage takes the precedent. You need to rewatch those movies.
I do. Okay.
Anyway, so Sean Bean does not die in that one. So anyway, Boromir dies at the end of the first film. However, he doesn't die until the beginning of the second book, aka The Two Towers.
Right.
Just an FYI. But overall, my feeling towards the kind of changing topic here now, by the way, the extended edition films honestly ruin for me the theatrical films. It's additional, over 2 hours, minutes of extra film. And so anytime I've watched those movies now, it's always going to be the extended edition.
Okay. Now, do you think that those extended cuts actually improved those movies?
100%.
Okay.
They definitely do. They add a little more, they go into a little more detail with characters. They give a character plot, a character, what's that word I'm looking for?
I don't know. Give character more backstory?
Yeah, exactly. That's the word I'm looking for, backstory. So they go in a little more detail about that, which I absolutely love. And then, going into the lore, first thing that comes to mind is when they talk about the Rohirrim. They talk about a little more about their culture and a little more about Rohan. I think that's really done much better in the extended edition for The Two Towers and the theatrical film. I feel like that is pretty much on point.
Yeah, they don't really explain terribly well why the Rohirrim are not like actively with Theoden.
Theoden. So basically, the Rohirrim are loyal to Rohan,
Correct. Yes.
not necessarily the king. So they're gonna do whatever they gotta do to protect their families. That's what they're all about. And when in the beginning of the Two Towers, you see Theoden, he's kind of bewitched in a way because of Saruman and Wormtongue kind of whispering in his ear, sweet nothings, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wormtongue, long story short, bans him from Rohan, and so he ends up leaving. Aemir ends up leaving with his group, and
with his
he doesn't
contingent
leave,
of cavalry.
Yeah, he doesn't leave Rohan per se. He kind of pretty much just
Circles
the outskirts, if you will, to find orcs and whatnot. And you see him run into a bunch of orcs and slash Yorkai, and they slaughter them throughout the night. And that's when they meet Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli, and they find that they're all pretty much mutilated. And he show up that scene, and that classic scene of when he kicks a helmet and he breaks his toe, but also ends up pulling the ranger out of his ass and following some tracks that lead into Fangorn Forest, and that's where Merry and Pippin end up going. And
right.
Anyway, so I think that kind of stuff is really cool. And then another thing about what I like about the extended edition is their introduction to the Shire and the Fellowship of the Ring. So in the original theatrical film, there's kind of a brief introduction of they like their staying at home, tending after crops, the smoking of pipe weed, that kind of stuff. But you see a little more of that, and then character development and the actual home kind of sense in the extended edition. I feel like that's better portrayed, if you will.
Sure.
In the extended.
Sure.
And then you see that scene where Frodo is sitting at the table talking to another hobbit. I don't know if he has a name, or I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they're in the Green Dragon, and there's one of the guys is saying like there's talk of big folk around. And so that kind of thing like isn't in the theatrical version, but it's in the extended. So like subtle things like that really do it for me.
I think the only like big folk that the hobbits like actually like put up with is Gandalf, because he comes by with the fireworks every so often.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was sitting at home one day and this wizard comes up and
well, it's like Gandalf also was just like a giant among men. Like he was like 6'7" or something, like compared to like everybody else on the screen.
I mean, anybody's gonna look tall if you're a hobbit at 3.5 feet tall.
Sure.
So anybody's gonna look giant to you. Maybe
right. He also just
cat.
gets like portrayed as being like just ever so much taller than like even like the elves and like Aragorn and the like.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you want to befriend a wizard that comes into town,
has the best weed, has all the fireworks,
You sit down, shoot the shit, have your little pipe, you smoke some weed, and you just shoot the shit. Who wouldn't want to befriend that guy? I would.
Sounds like a great time.
Yeah. But then, you end up finding out that some guy has the one ring that basically will bring destruction onto your town.
Yes, and I don't even remember, like, how, like, Gandalf even, like, he just, like, notices that, like, he disappears. And he's, like, old enough and, like, wise enough to know that, okay, Bilbo can't do that normally. He's not a magic man.
What do you mean?
Like, how he discovers that Bilbo has, like, the one ring. Like, aside from him, like, actually taking the ring and throwing it into the fire so he can see the inscription on it.
Well, yeah, he had some a suspicion about it, and so he kind of, goes to Minas Tirith, which I'm glad they did that. Even in the theatrical film, they show him arriving to Minas Tirith and reading some scrolls about the second age, the first age, or whatever.
Yeah.
And realizing how do you determine if that is the one ring, and so you basically throw it into a fire if any
Elvish comes up on it, then if if a very particular Elvish poem just happens to illuminate after it gets heated up, then
inscription is the word I was looking for. Engraving, no, that's the word I was looking for. And a little engraving of black speech into the ring. You're gonna find out that's the one ring that you should probably destroy fairly quickly.
Yes, as soon as possible. So from there, one of the things that I probably most enjoy, I guess, just with this original trilogy, is that it's weird to call them like nods to like the first films, because like we get like the prequels basically afterwards, after the Lord of the Rings,
the original three, yeah.
Yes, but you get like little nods to the original trilogy,
of course,
and The Hobbit and Rings of Power.
Yeah,
like the one that I like, and one of the things that I called out in the Rings of Power episode we did, is that the stranger is Gandalf. I think it is because he tells the hobbits to follow their nose. And that is a line that he says in the original trilogy.
You're right.
So that could just be a massive red herring. But I'm like, okay, tall wizard man.
He is, in fact, a wizard. For sure. I will agree with you there. There are multiple wizards, in fact, that come in at that time. Not necessarily Gandalf, but I do agree that it's a wizard. But if you're going to base it off of that one line,
particular line,
the entire series of Rings of Power, he does not talk until basically the last episode, and they give him this one long prologue, and he kind of just throws out some wisdom here and there, like a typical wizard would.
It just happens to match up.
To base it off of that one line, I don't necessarily agree with. But if that ends up being the case, I'll go along with it and I'll enjoy the ride.
Sure. But you also get other nods where, like, in Minas Tirith, the dwarf they find is one of the hobbit dwarves that you see.
Wait, start over. What did you say?
So, in the Fellowship, when they get to Minas Tirith, and they're going through...
They're not going to Minas Tirith in the Fellowship.
Well, right before they
you're
fight...
You're talking about Moria?
Moria, thank you. Right before they fight, air quotes, the Balrog.
Yeah.
One of the dwarves that they find there is supposed to be one of the dwarves involved in the Hobbit film.
Yes. That is...
The one that was related to Gimli.
Yes. That is, in fact, relative. He is the... oh my god, what is his name?
I forget his name, but he was like the...
kind of like Dwalin.
Yeah.
I think it's Dwalin.
The one with the crazy, like, Isaac Newton hair.
Yes, exactly. Well said. Yeah, but here lies Dwalin. That's what it is. But yeah, those little things like that. See, when I first saw that film, I barely even remembered who that was and didn't really care enough to look into it at the time, But as I've gotten older and I've gotten more and more interested
as
in
more
Lord of the
media
Rings,
has been included.
Right. Obviously, there's those little things that you can connect. I mean, obviously, since I was young, I've been reading up on Lord of the Rings and that kind of stuff. But at a younger age, you're not going to be able to remember certain details or really put two and two together. But as you get older, obviously, you're going to start to figure things out for yourself. And so that's where I'm at. Is I'm definitely more of a fan than I've ever been, and I'm very excited for what the future holds for this universe, if you will, and so on.
Yeah. Well, because right now in Rings of Power, they are describing the introduction of the Third Age, I believe.
Yes.
So how, Mordor, legitimately just got created at the end of the first season.
Yep,
and all that.
Freaking volcano. They destroyed the Southlands by unleashing a dam.
Yes, and the pyroclastic cloud that just permanently covers this several square mile area in ash and cloud.
And how people didn't die from a pyroclastic cloud instantly, but no, that's not
Elvish magic, I guess. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. I don't care. However, no.
Yeah, that scene.
Anyway, it was definitely a cool scene that the first time that I saw that. Overall, that was definitely my favorite episode of that entire series.
Yes.
But one thing that, moving over back to Lord of the Rings, so in the extended edition, you see that the boat that Boromir was put in the beginning or towards the end of the Fellowship, when he ends up dying, he is put into the boat. He has a sword and shield on his chest, and he goes over the waterfall. And then in the extended edition film, his brother ends up finding him in the river, and seeing the horn broken in half, and then he ends up taking that to his father,
driving him into the spiraling depression. But
yeah. So that's just one more thing that I feel like really gives an edge to the extended edition.
Sure.
Because if that wasn't...
Yeah, because it is a little bit weird, because he just kind of knows his brother is dead at the beginning of the Two Towers when you first meet him. I think he has one line or two about that situation, be like, okay, the messengers have come and told me that he's dead, or something to that effect. While in the extended edition, he actually finds the body.
Yeah, he finds the body, and he ends up telling his father that his favorite son is dead, and they go into the whole spiel of that. But again, how can you not say the extended edition? Granted, there's such longer films, and easily a quarter of the day is taken if you're going to sit down and watch that. Just one of the films.
Yeah, disregard trying to watch all three in a row,
which I've done, and it was a glorious day.
Yeah,
it was
what does that end up being? 13 hours?
Well spent. Do not regret it one bit. You know what? Maybe call me a nerd or a super fan. I don't care, dude. I would do that again in a heartbeat. And actually, yesterday and a little bit of today, I ended up watching Return of the King extended edition to honor Gondorian Day.
Yeah.
So obviously, you have to watch that in memoriam. So, just another jab at what I liked about the extended is you see that confrontation between Aragorn and Sauron's mouth at the Black Gate. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And to hear what the prosthetics and everything that he had to wear, that extra actor, whatever, the makeup and everything that went into that, and then them going in after the film was made to widen his mouth to get more of a creepier look, if you will. I mean,
fantastically done.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do something similar to the Army of the Dead, where they're in like a full like costume and makeup and whatnot, but then they put on like that green kind of like shimmery effect to them.
Yeah.
But they're in like full costume. Like those are actual people.
Yes.
So I thought that was very well done as well. Just the length of detail they put into the costume design is great in this film.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the extras that look like male soldiers were actually mostly all female. They just put on wigs and glued on beards to the women's faces, because not a lot of men, I guess, were
Not a lot of volunteers, or I guess they
taking.
just didn't have enough.
Right, exactly. So the fact that was going on or that happened, I think is freaking awesome, and point me in the direction to that female because I will marry that woman up. Because that's honestly badass, and the fact that they were an extra in the movie. I mean, that's so cool. Maybe I'm just a nerd. I don't know.
I'm sure somebody has been accredited to that role. So if you want to be weird about it, you
if
can
you're
find
an
it.
extra in Lord of the Rings, definitely DM us at on the Instagram, and let's go out to dinner sometime. Can we edit this part out?
No, but stays in.
Oh,
Moving
God.
on. Okay. So
I'm an
we've
idiot.
talked ad nauseum on the original trilogy at this point. So I think we can give The Hobbit its time in the sun here.
Sure, let's roll over.
So my personal experience with The Hobbit is that it is not nearly as strong as the original trilogy, but that's not necessarily fair to say. I was very much younger and impressionable when the first trilogy came out
Sure.
back in the early 2000s. While
Late 2000s, buddy.
no, it was
The Lord of the Rings
2000,
came out. Last one came out. It was like
2003.
2003?
2003 was Return of the King.
Wow. So, no, it was later than that, obviously. No, Google that right now.
I will Google that right now.
When did the first Hobbit come out?
Oh, I'm talking about like Return of the King. The Hobbit came out in 2000, like 10, 2000.
I thought that's what you wanted to talk about was The Hobbit.
Right. I was trying to make the analogy that
Oh, okay.
I was much younger.
Okay, we'll continue. I apologize. I didn't realize. Go ahead.
But I don't remember really much of what happens in the Hobbit films outside of Desolation of Smaug. Like that's the one that stands out to me. I think it's funny that my favorite in this trilogy is also the second one, the one in the middle, where they actually have to deal with the dragon.
Yeah. They meet him.
And they learn the dragon has a personality.
AKA
Oh boy, does he have a personality.
AKA Benedict Cumberbatch. And I know some people that have a hard time pronouncing his last name. It's Cumberbatch, just so
Yes.
everybody's clear. Not Cumberpatch or Cumberbottom or anything.
I mean,
like
if it
that.
makes you feel any better, he can't pronounce penguins to save his life.
Hey. That's a nice little jab. I understood that reference. I enjoyed The Hobbit. I mean, obviously, there's. Overall, I think the Hobbit series is entertaining. I don't dislike the films. Obviously, there's going to be some differences between film and book, as we've been talking about.
Yes,
prior to
especially
this.
when you're trying to stretch out a singular book.
But there is a lot more detail in this one book that you can't really leave out. Whereas you can kind of.
There was a bit more that you can omit from the original trilogy books than you can with The Hobbit.
Yeah, there's more to work with in three books. Excuse me, 3 books than in one book. You kind of have to do that, and I feel like it was well done. But overall, the plot line and the story arc for all the characters and everything, I thought is good.
Yeah,
Obviously, the Hobbit's not my favorite. I like the original Lord of the Rings better.
sure. I mean, my biggest takeaway from the Hobbit is the Misty Mountain song.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Both the one that they sing in the movie and I guess the more popular, unfortunately, Ed Sheeran song.
Okay, let's definitely change. Yeah,
We'll
because
change topic,
I feel like
but
you're gonna sing that to me, and I really don't want you to.
no, trust me, you don't want to hear that. But
Insert song here.
copyright.
As long as there's a mention of it in the subscript or something like that, we can get away with it, right?
Yes and no. But from there, I'm not. It's weird because the main the lead dwarf just constantly hates the idea that he has to work with Bilbo, even up to the end of the film where he like ever so barely gets over it.
Well,
While everybody else is just like, hey, jabbing their brother. It's like we kind of need him. Maybe you shouldn't treat him like trash.
he basically thinks of it like as one more mouth to feed. He can't really fend for himself. He doesn't really have any battle experience. Everybody's gonna have to look over there. Everybody's gonna have to look over their shoulder to make sure he is safe because of the job that he, air quotes, is hired on to do, and that is to be a burglar
Yes,
and get into
the sneak thief.
basically where Smaug is and find
Find the crown
no, not the crown. It's the jewel
or the jewel. Yes, that's what it is.
or the gem. I forget what it's called.
Yep.
Anyway, the Arkenstone. That's what it's called. Woo!
We got there.
I promise I got that all from memory. See, this is I didn't look at my notes. Nothing. That was all from memory.
Oh gosh,
Which
what
is-
are you? Some sort of like fan
Freaking nerd.
nerd? Oh man, okay, but my biggest complaint is that the Battle of Five Armies did not really seem like it was actually like five armies. It felt like they were just like five platoons. That should have been larger scale.
So what you have is let me give me a second here. So you have the dwarves, you have the elves, you have men, you have orcs. And then I can't remember what the fifth one is, but I think it was like a combination of orcs and some other shit going down. But it really boils down to four in the movie. Now, in the book, I think they go into a little more description of what the fifth one is, but I don't think that's really portrayed well in the movie. But the overall battle of the five armies, that whole scene, if you will, I think it kind of there's a lot going on,
Right.
and it's entertaining. There's some cheesy parts, like the one part where what's his face is riding down in the wagon to save his children, and takes a wagon and jams a spear into this giant basically, and it's just like it was so lame. Why did that have to be in the movie? But it's other things like that that are cool, and then other things that are just like, why? Just why? Anything stand out for you in The Hobbit, Kenny, that just really grinded your gears?
Not really. Other than the previously mentioned just treatment of Bilbo. Smaug killed every scene that he was in. Like Benedict, I think, just did a really good job with delivering his lines.
Yeah. Have you seen like him dressed up in like a jumpsuit and having all the little stickers on him for the CGI effect?
What did they stick him in a mocap suit?
Yeah. They had like the little head cam and the camera facing towards him, and so he's
I don't think
literally
I've
like
seen that.
crawling around on the floor, giving his dialogue, and I think that was really cool.
I'm gonna have to look that up then.
Yeah, definitely look that up. It's really cool to see that kind of stuff because you never like you kind of just figure that somebody is CGIing this dragon to go all over the place under the mountain.
But
and
they got to
whatnot.
base it on a model frame. That's how animations work.
Exactly. You don't really put that together. You kind of just think that somebody can just CGI that shit.
And you can. That's just a lot more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And so you just think that Benedict Cumberbatch is in this little studio, kind of like what we got on here, and he's kind of just acting into a microphone. But actually, he is, in fact, crawling on the floor in a freaking suit.
Get it in character.
Getting into character, doing his whole spiel. And I think that kind of shit is not really appreciated, especially now.
All right. Well, did you have any other last kind of closing thoughts on The Hobbit? Because I think it's weird to say that The Hobbit doesn't provide as much kind of material as the original trilogy, but I guess realistically it doesn't.
They do. They kind of go into they talk about Mithril and a bunch of other stuff too, subtly, but I think the concept of Mithril is gonna be
That's more of a Rings of Power.
Right, exactly. It's gonna be more of a topic for Rings of Power. But in regards to what your question was, anything about The Hobbit, no. But I do have some fun facts. And I feel like I'm going to repeat myself once or twice here, but I do want to read these fun facts that I ended up finding.
Sure, go for it.
So fun fact number 1, obviously it went through a ton of script revisions.
Yes.
I mean, obviously...
you know the reason behind that, right? The original reason?
Go ahead.
Peter Jackson did not ever want to work for New Line after releasing
Actually,
that.
I did know that. I did know that.
He was adamant about never working with those people again. But I guess the shareholders and the people that own the rights to the Hobbit property basically told him, it's okay, if you're going to do any filming for this, you got to get it done before 2010.
Sure.
Just the filming, not the release, but that proper filming and getting everything produced.
Yeah, I mean, the Tolkien estate, they're pretty anal about that shit, and they don't want to give everything away all at once, and they want to be discreet on some things, and that's why they're kind of letting up with this new Rings of Power series. They're letting up and kind of giving leeway on some things, but also trying to stick to a main storyline / whatever. And so that's why I think that the Rings of Power, regardless of people say maybe this first season was either good, in the middle, bad, whatever you want to call it, but I feel like it's only going to get better from here.
All right. What was your next little fun fact?
Fun fact number 2. So obviously everybody's going to know that Stuart Townsend was going to play Aragorn.
Yes.
He was originally supposed to play Aragorn, but also Nicolas Cage auditioned, by the way, for all those that didn't know. So Nick Cage, Stuart Townsend all offered the role of Aragorn before Viggo Mortensen, and even Russell Crowe was offered as a potential backup.
That would be a very different film having Nicolas Cage in that.
That would change the entire
dynamic.
100%.
Because Mortensen was classically trained in swordsmanship prior to the film.
Yeah.
So it was nothing for him to actually do the combat scenes.
Isn't that wild? Didn't that just blow you away a little bit? Nicolas Cage. Stuart Townsend, I can definitely agree with. I think that would have been a good choice, but I think some family issues or something came up or whatever the excuse may have been. But fun fact number 2, this is honestly this might blow you away. But Jake Gyllenhaal auditioned for Frodo. Did you know that?
I don't think I did, but he would have been about the same age as Elijah Wood at that point in time, so I could see it.
Yeah. And then, obviously, we mentioned this before, Christopher Lee wanted to play Gandalf, and the only one to ever meet Tolkien, which
Just randomly at a bar.
Yeah, it's definitely worth mentioning twice, in my opinion. I mean, how freaking cool is that shit? So, next fun fact, Sean Bean trekked up a mountain in costume every single time to do his scene. I forget where it was, in the Fellowship.
Yeah.
Basically because he was afraid of flying. And so they're going to take him up in a helicopter to go on location. But he is so afraid of flying that he decided to hike up a mountain, couple hours up and a couple hours back down.
Full garb.
Because he was afraid of flying, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think they were just like coptering people up the mountain.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I could see it.
Like, if you think about it, that only builds the type of character into.
Well, he's probably very glad that he died. Like all those scenes where he looks like he's out of breath, it's probably because he is.
Well, it kind of gives that rugged look. Like after you go up a mountain in costume, you're obviously gonna look better in that costume than at the bottom of the mountain than you are at the top, right? So that kind of gives you that rugged look of, I've been trekking through the woods with my companions, and so that kind of gives them that look, as whereas freshly clean or whatnot.
Sure.
So the other fun fact I want to talk about was Flight of the Conchords. Brett McKenzie made a cameo, as does Peter Jackson himself in The Village of Bree. So
yes, I think Jackson's kids are also involved.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like the small like children are just Peter Jackson's kids a lot of time.
I believe that. So Brett McKenzie, he was one of the elves that when Liv Tyler's character is on her horse going to making her way to go to the Undying Lands, and this elf comes up to him and is like, Lady Arwen, there needs to be no delay. So that is Brett McKenzie of Flight of the Conchords. Just an FYI. And obviously, we all know who Bill the Pony is.
Yes. I do, at least.
Yeah, so those were 2 men in a horse costume. I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but I just think that is freaking wild.
Funny.
And so another thing, the Return of the King, Titanic, and Ben-Hur are the current 3 record holders for the most Oscars at 11 apiece.
Yes. I think it was also like the first fantasy, like one of the first fantasy films to win both Best Director and Best Film.
Yes.
In that particular year?
Yes.
Well, or just in general. My fun fact is that I do know that a lot of the cast end up like keeping their horses like after the film. Like they bought the horses up, and they didn't want to part with them after the fact, so they stabled them up somewhere. But just the dedication and the appreciation to the working animals on scene.
Yeah. And what I'm writing? I don't even know what I'm wrote here. This is something that I totally forgot to bring up. So does anyone else think that when the Witch King dies, it sounds like a balloon filled with helium deflating?
Well, that...
Total.
Yes, that's probably what the Foley art is kind of intended for, but the idea is that the entity is like imploding on itself.
Yeah.
So
But when I see that scene, I can't help but kind of, laugh to myself.
You just think it's deflating?
I'm thinking of a balloon deflating.
Like, could you imagine you just hear it go, what?
It might as well. It might as freaking well, dude. I mean, that it's comical to me. And speaking of comical, the counting between Legolas and Gimli during their battle scenes of killing orcs, and they're going like 1, 2, 3.
And the big elephant. Those have a name. I can never remember.
Oliphant.
Are they called Oliphants?
They're called Oliphants. So
Okay.
that counting,
They only count as one.
That only counts as one, exactly. But that little spiel actually starts in the two towers at Helm's Deep. And so Gimli's up there on the wall, and he's literally going from left to right when they're on the ladders climbing the wall. The Uruk-hai are, and he's going 1, 2, 17, 18, 21. That kind of shit just cracks me up.
Yeah, I think they had the best dynamic of two characters actually like interacting with each other.
Yeah, you kind of
have to, because Tolkien kind of established himself that the elves and the dwarves do not get along at all.
At all.
So them actually having like originally forced friendly banter on a competitive like level. Like, let's count how many heads we can chop off in this short period of time and try to outdo each other. And then just the fact that
it becomes
Gimli has to like lower himself to the elf to be like, toss me. Just toss me.
Just don't tell the elf.
Just don't tell the elf.
Not a word. But yeah, it really, how do you not fall in love with these films? The original 3, how do you not fall in love with these films? They're such great films, such great writing. It just, all together, hits the spot. And, like, it goes to show, like, even, like, to prove my point, this is, for those that don't know, I love all of this so much. I even got the freaking tattoo of the Argonath tattooed on my forearm. For those of you that don't know what the Argonath are, it's in the Fellowship of the Ring. They're going down the river, and they're entering the realm of Gondor, and you see these 2 statues carved into the mountain, and that's who's that? Isildur, and I forget the other cat's name. Give me a second, let me look that up.
I don't think it was his father.
No, Isildur and Anarion.
Okay.
Anarion. So those 2 guys, they are kin to Aragorn. So, just that little scene, that little shot, if you took a picture, that's basically what's on my forearm right now. And I just think that is probably one of the coolest shots in the entire series. I have other favorite scenes too.
I was about to say I hope so, just because you have it tattooed on your skin.
I mean, I can go into a little spiel right here if you'll let me of what a couple of my favorite scenes were. You want me to do that, Kenny?
You know what? Why not? But let me get ahead of you here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you're super amped. So my favorite scene, I do think, is just basically Helm's Deep in its entirety.
Sure.
Just like the whole idea is like, what hope does man have against such hatred?
Reckless hate.
Yes, reckless hate is I'm pretty sure that's the exact line. But just them being like, you know what? Screw it. We can either die out there or we can die in here. Charge.
I'm gonna freaking go out with a bang.
Gimli, you can't get on a horse. You go doot the horn.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, we haven't given up yet. Prepare your asses, orcs.
Yeah.
And then just Gandalf at the top being like, hey, your king stands alone. Are you going to let that stand? And the other guy, Aramir is just like, no.
Not alone. And then
not alone.
Yeah, so Gimli goes up and blows this horn. For those of you that don't know, he blows the horn for Helm Hammerhand.
Yes.
Basically, he's the king prior to um, Theoden years ago.
Years and years ago.
So he actually built, if I recall, Helm's Deep, and basically that became a fortress for Rohan. And so they had this massive horn go down the side of the fortress, and only a dwarf can really
Somebody with the lungs of a god,
lung
right?
capacity of a freaking god blow into this freaking horn. And literally they show that shot of the horns and then freaking like dust or dirt coming out at the end because
It hadn't been
it's
blown basically in centuries.
And so that goes to show like this is their war cry of like, hey, we're going out with a freaking bang on horseback, going down the freaking ramp into what's left of the Uruk-hai. Easily probably another 5,000 soldiers left. I mean, when you're looking out there, some are into the fort, and then there's others still out on the plains there, and I would say that's half of them still remaining. But then, like you said, that's when Gandalf and the rest of the soldiers, the Rohirrim, come down the hill, and they had that huge score that Howard Shore comes in with.
Yes.
And I just freaking like, fuck yes!
It's like flip a table, slam the door,
and
throw your beer on the floor.
The sun comes up over the hill and shines down onto the Uruk-hai, and they're basically blinded, and the freaking horses run into them, and I freaking...
Yeah, the sound design of that entire scene is phenomenal. Just between what
name a better way to end a movie? I guess the only rival between that and just that movie alone would be the Battle of Isengard.
Right, which is happening concurrently.
Basically.
I guess earlier in the day because it happens overnight. Helm's Deep happens overnight, but Isengard is mostly just like the one afternoon.
Yep.
But the final march of the Ents.
Yes.
Just
the last march of the Ents, I believe it's actually what it's called in the book. That chapter, they kind of go into it. Okay, so you said your favorite part or your favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk now.
Yes, go ahead. Your turn.
Okay, so I got a couple, and they're gonna be phenomenal. I think people are going to agree with me. So one of my favorite scenes is the ring race chasing Arwen. Sorry, it's when they have that helicopter shot of Arwen getting chased by all nine ring race in that V formation, and Arwen's in the middle, and that freaking shot just coming in via the sky, probably a helicopter, and the score that goes along with that. That's probably one of my favorite parts just in the Fellowship alone. I think that's super cool.
That was just before she gets into the riverbed, right?
Yeah, just before she crosses the river and then does some freaking Elvish speech.
The Elvish magic and gets the water.
The horses that come in with the water and they take out the wraiths, and that's the last time we see them until the Two Towers. But the end of the Fellowship, though, the way that the camera goes on, it has to be some kind of cable, but it's panning down to the forest floor, and it's basically showing all the Uruk-hai going towards Boromir, blowing the horn, and everybody's trying to go and fight him. So that little shot of the camera sliding on a cable, I think that's super, super freaking cool. So those are my two favorite in the Fellowship. Just the Fellowship. We're
That's
not even
fair.
at the Two Towers yet. But we talked about this Ent running into the water while on fire.
She's like, just like flailing about the best way that you can imagine a tree would flail.
That part, it's so short, but it's so sweet. It's just like that was fantastic.
Yes.
The movie itself is kind of, dramatic, a little serious, but they throw in this little funny part, and that kind of stuff I love in a movie, That kind of stuff is phenomenal. And then, the Helm's Deep part with Gandalf, obviously. Battle of Pelennor Fields, phenomenal. But I'm going to have to end it on this. Lighting of the beacons. I'm sorry, but that's probably my favorite part in the entire movie trilogy is when those are getting lit. And the score that goes along with that. I can watch that over and over again.
Yeah, and then just the one guy doing his damnest to be like, we're not going to help Gondor unless they call for aid. Like, I can't be bothered.
And then Denethor?
Yeah, and then they get basically like the nod of like, oh hey, go light the flame.
Yeah.
From Gandalf, and then
Gandalf
the one guy just kind of storms into the room. It's just like, okay, Gondor calls for aid, and the one guy's just like, god damn it.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not love that? But so let's just go ahead and do our closing thoughts. Kenny, you close us out first, and I'll lead us in.
Oh, geez. Okay, so our closing thoughts. Lord of the Rings, I think, has always been a solid piece of media, regardless of which trilogy you are watching. None of them fall below a 7 for me. Even though I will say that
A 7, really?
Yes. Because
generally speaking, all the movies, you would give it a 7.
That's the lowest I would rate them.
I wouldn't go below an 8, honestly.
Because, I'm including The Hobbit in this. The Hobbits I am putting a little bit lower. The original trilogy, for me, will always be... I think I really put Two Towers up there as like a 9.5 out of 10 kind of situation where it's like, this film is basically perfect in my brain.
Yeah.
That is probably a lot of nostalgia talking. But... The Fellowship and Return of the King are also like, solid 8s and 9s within themselves. Like, it was just phenomenal for the time. And stuff that hasn't been, like, repeated, like, in other properties that have had bigger budgets. Like, I made the mention earlier. It's like Game of Thrones easily could have gone this route. And, like, with, like, their epic battle scenes. They never really did.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I agree with that.
So, just from there, it's just like, this is like, Lord of the Rings is just like the shining example of fantasy. Like, Tolkien nailed it.
I mean, he was literally the first to nail it.
You're right, but...
I mean,
there's nothing really else to be said there. Like, he just got it correct.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an idea and you basically become, like he was, obsessed with it, I think that's fair. I mean,
like, he created like 3 languages.
They made, if you haven't seen, Kenny, have you seen the Tolkien film?
I have.
So if you have not seen the Tolkien film, guys, I'm telling you, you need to watch this film. Not the Lord of the Rings. I'm saying the general Tolkien film that talks about his life and how he meets his wife and
like
how
his
he
little
comes up
like
with the
life
idea of
autobiography documentary sort of thing.
But it's a legit movie. I forget the actor who plays him, but that was a fantastic film, and I'm surprised that hasn't really come up until now. Honestly, why didn't I make a note of that? Damn it, I'm kind of let down.
Because this is one of the weird instances, right? Where Tolkien very much is Lord of the Rings. Like, that is his identity. Like, his just contribution to fantasy cannot be denied. Mostly that is the result of the original trilogy. The books within themselves. Basically everything that he's done in regards to, like, anything involving Middle-earth.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I just looked up the Tolkien cast, and it's actually Nicholas Hoult who plays what's his name? The blue guy in X-Men.
The Beast?
The Beast. Yes, he plays the Beast in the X-Men series movies. So that's the guy who plays Tolkien.
Okay.
So I definitely recommend to everybody listening, go watch the Tolkien movie. I think it's phenomenal. Um, but obviously, if you have not seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies, or The Hobbit, or The Rings of Power for that matter,
You're missing out.
you're missing out. Go watch it. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, clearly you most likely have probably seen at least one of them, if
Yes.
not all.
I mean, granted, it's been like 20 years,
Yeah, we're
just
coming
about
up.
for the original series.
Yeah, we're coming up on the anniversary next month, man. It's wild. But like I said, definitely check these films out, these series out. But I'm gonna move on with my closing thoughts, and then we'll go from there, buddy.
Sure.
So overall, seeing the movie in theater for me was a fantastic experience. I always get that same feeling pretty much, regardless of how many times I've seen the film. There's always that feeling of shock and awe of what's the word I'm looking for? You're having a flashback to the past.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, nostalgia, exactly. I'm having that feeling of nostalgia from when I first saw these films in theater for the first time. And it always brings me back to that original feeling of shock and awe. It's like, oh my God, this is groundbreaking. For the first time, somebody did this scene CGI and it is groundbreaking, and nobody's ever done something like this before. So Peter Jackson, for me, will always be on that top pedestal, if you will.
Sure.
And just basically when Barad-dûr collapses, the Eye of Sauron, when that collapses at the end of Return of the King, like when I first saw that for the first time, dude, I was just like, yes, finally he was defeated, and at the same time, woo, dude, it was shock and awe. Like I said, it was such a cool scene. And for those that don't know, Sam marries Rosie Cotton. As you remember, at the end of the Return of the King, he ends up marrying Rosie Cotton. Now, what you don't know, which they don't go into in the film, but they do go into the book, is actually later he gets on a ship with Gimli and Legolas to go to the Undying Lands. Because for a short time, technically, he was considered a ring bearer.
So he has extended life.
So he was given that honor, privilege of getting on a ship and going to the Undying Lands.
Yeah.
With Gimli and Legolas to meet up with,
with
Frodo,
Bilbo,
Elrond, Galadriel, etc.
Did Galadriel end up leaving by the end of it all?
Yeah, because she
she had her kingdom.
She basically, in the beginning or the middle, I guess, technically, of the Fellowship, she kind of had that revelation of, Frodo tempting her with the ring, and then she was like, yeah.
No, Frodo didn't tempt her. The ring tempted her.
Correct. I stand corrected. But anyway, you see my point. Like, she resisted, and so therefore she felt like she could be herself as Galadriel and go off into the Undying Lands. And that's where we see her at the end of Return of the King. And she ends up going with Elrond, her husband, which I'm drawing a blank on his name. But anyway, yeah. So that's all I pretty much got about that.
All right. Well, I think that's a solid part to wrap up. So again, if you are listening to this, this along with a couple of our other more recent episodes will be uploaded to your various podcast listening services.
Streaming services.
Yes, streaming services, whichever. I consider streaming and listening different stuff, whichever.
They're the same, buddy, I promise.
You're correct. I'm just being weird about it. We will continue also posting these to YouTube as well. So if you are listening to us on YouTube, please do give us a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. What was your favorite bit about the series as a whole? We'd love to hear from you. So from there, I think that it's going to be a good night.
Yeah. Everybody be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and give us a like on Facebook as well. And everybody have a great evening, day, wherever you are in the world.
Yes. See you, folks.